with Russia. The big question is, could the UK be next when it comes to tariffs? Joining me on the panel tonight is broadcaster and columnist Esther Kraku, GB News presenter Alex Armstrong and the journalist Jonathan Liss. We'll be heading live to hear President Trump speak in just a few minutes, but first let's get your news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Ben, thank you. Your headlines at 9 o'clock. Ukraine has agreed to accept a US proposal for a 30-day ceasefire with Russia after talks concluded today in Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, the US says it will immediately restore intelligence sharing and security assistance to Ukraine. That's according to a joint statement. The US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, spoke after the meeting, saying the ball is now in Russia's court.
Take this offer now to the Russians, and we hope that they'll say yes, to peace. The ball is now in their court. And but again, the president's objective here is, number one, above everything else, he wants the war to end. And I think today Ukraine has taken a concrete step in that regard. We hope the Russians will reciprocate.
And in the last hour, US President Donald Trump spoke about the Ukraine war ceasefire deal.
Get the Russians to agree?
I'll talk to Vladimir Putin, yeah. I want to get, look, that's the other, it takes two to tango, as they say, right? So hopefully he'll also agree, and I really think that would be 75% of the way. The rest is getting it documented and, you know, negotiating land positions, etc.
So you'll talk to him this week about the deal?
So, yeah.
So and when do you anticipate meeting him in person?
In place on the Ukrainian side, how close do you think then you are to a total ceasefire with
Well, I hope it'll be over the next few days. I'd like to see. I know we have a big meeting with Russia tomorrow, and some great conversations hopefully will ensue. The people have done a great job. Marco Rubio's been great.
Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer hailed what he called the remarkable breakthrough in the talks. The Prime Minister, who has led European efforts to build a peacekeeping mission in the event of an agreement to end the war is reached, said the ball is now in the Russia's court. In other news, a 59-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter in connection with the North Sea collision yesterday between a cargo ship and a US military jet fuel tanker. It comes as the Coast Guard has called off the search for a missing crew member, while emergency services rescued 36 other crew. Triple killer Carl Clifford has been given a whole life order for the crossbow and knife murders of his ex-partner Louise Hunt, her sister Hannah Hunt and her mother Carol Hunt. 26-year-old Clifford, who refused to attend his sentencing today, was also found guilty of the raping of Louise before he killed her. Mr Justice Benathan described Clifford as a man soaked in self-pity who held women in utter contempt. The three women were the wife and daughters of BBC racing commentator John Hunt, who earlier told Cambridge Crown Court Clifford had killed 3 beautiful mockingbirds. And the White House has confirmed that the 50% tariff planned for tomorrow on some Canadian metals has now been cancelled. Instead, a previously planned 25% tariff will still be enacted. Donald Trump had told reporters outside the White House this afternoon that he was rethinking his decision to double tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium after Ontario's Premier cancelled a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to 3 US states. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening to you. Thank you for your company. Ben Leo covering for Patrick whilst he enjoys a well-earned holiday this week. We'll be heading live to Washington for that President Trump speech very, very shortly. But first, it's the start of the Cheltenham Festival today, and respected horse racing commentator John Hunt, known for his work on BBC Radio 5 Live, should have been there, calling the action. Instead, he was at Cambridge Crown Court for the sentencing of crossbow killer Kyle Clifford, the pathetic excuse for a man who murdered John's wife Carol and his 2 daughters Louise and Hannah in Bushey, Hertfordshire, last year.
For each of these 3 murders, the sentence will be one of life imprisonment with a whole life order. that means a sentence from which you will never be released.
So I don't want to talk much about Kyle Clifford or what he did. He's a non-entity who will die in prison. But I would like to pay tribute tonight to John Hunt, his surviving daughter Amy, and their immediate friends and family who have suffered through this terrible tragedy. John is a man of courage who's been subject to the most despicable suffering a father and husband could go through. I pray for him and Amy that, although life will never be the same, that they are somehow able to carry on with each other by their side as best they can. And like many cowards before him, including Thomas Cashman, who shot dead 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell, and Jordan McSweeney, who sexually assaulted and murdered Zara Alina, Kyle Clifford refused to take the dock today for his sentencing. It's my belief he should have been forced to listen to the devastatingly painful victim impact statements from the likes of John Hunt. Clifford should have been shown the same mercy he showed his victims. None. He should have been dragged by the hair and made to stand in the dock using whatever force was necessary. The law, I believe, now must change so the likes of Clifford can no longer cower alone in their holding cells beneath courtrooms. The Prime Minister today said that's what he does plan to do, and I hope he sees through his pledge. But let's get the thoughts of my panel now. Columnist and broadcaster Esther Kraku, GBNews presenter Alex Armstrong, and the political commentator and journalist Jonathan Liss. Good evening to you all.
Evening.
Good evening.
Esther, what's your take on this whole sentencing situation? Should we be forcing killers and convicts and criminals to take to the dock and look their victims and their families in the eye?
I mean, we had the same conversation with Lucy Letby when she chose to not be present for a sentencing hearing. Look, I think the dignity of the victims' families should always be paramount. I understand the urge to have these people face the music as it would, but what if the convicted criminal comes into court and makes a scene or starts shouting or starts abusing the victims' families? I don't think there's anything dignified about having someone who's refusing to come potentially making an undignified scene that could actually extend the family's horror. I'm personally an advocate for the death penalty because I don't think that people like this should actually be paid for by the taxpayer to live, especially when the crime is so cut and dry and so abhorrent that there's really no excuse for them to draw breath. However, that being aside, I just think I think there's a potential for some undignified scenes, and I think families have been through enough.
Yeah, I'm with you on the death penalty, by the way. I think I've said before on this channel, in nailed-on cases where we know for sure 100% that somebody committed such a heinous crime, then I don't see a problem with it. Alex, in terms of creating a scene in court, and they could possibly, as Esther rightly points out, be shouting and causing a disturbance, why can't we just duct tape their mouth?
Yeah. Whatever's necessary.
And by the way, may I add, this is if the victim's family want it. If they don't want that kind of, as you would call it, indignity in court, fine, let the morons stay.
I mean, you're going to duct tape them and wrap them up like a
yeah,
why not?
I have no problem with that, by the way. And I think this was the case with Axel Radubikhan. I hate to say his name, by the way. I hate saying his name, but he managed to get out of a lot of those statements because he complained about having feeling hungry or having chest pains. A load of rubbish, if you ask me. People should be. It should be the family's decision because they're also can choose whether they sit in the room or not as well. So the families get some kind of say. But people who've committed these crimes must have to sit through and listen to the impact of it. It is the basic level of justice that those families deserve. And to let these people off on this ridiculous humanitarian grounds, these mostly guilty people, especially when we know they're guilty, it's absolutely disgraceful. And no innocent person would ever object to sitting through those kinds of sentences, if you ask me.
Yeah. It's not humanitarian grounds. I mean, people...
A lot of them are. Like, Axel Radubikhan was let off because of he had to go and get aid, so to speak, and that was humanitarian reasons.
I think that they said that he would be seen by a doctor shortly.
And they had to continue. And the doctor said he was fine, and the judge sent him back to court.
Exactly. So
he went to see a doctor. He came back and then kept complaining about fake chest pains.
Again, we're pandering to them again. I don't care if they've got chest pains. Like you said, strap them up, force them to listen to this. It's not. We shouldn't be wasting more time. These families already lost children in some cases to these cruel people. We don't need to show them any humanity.
The ultimate justice, I think, in these cases is the death penalty, not like trudging them up, banding them together like goats.
But they still need a sentencing, right? And that's the important bit. So even if they are going to the death penalty, they still need to be sentenced for that.
And this is the bit
and as you said, Alex, they still need to hear the full impact of their crimes, which will happen in a court setting when they're being sentenced by a judge.
Absolutely.
Jonathan, death penalty?
No, of course not. That's a silly argument.
Why is it silly?
Because...
By the way, if someone murdered you, I'd advocate for the death penalty.
Yeah. That is so sweet of you.
I don't just say it because obviously you're my friend. I just say, as a matter of principle, I don't.
No, it's not. Look, it's not. No, I didn't mean it's a silly argument. There is a completely that was flippant. There was a completely legitimate case to be made for the death penalty, but I will passionately and vociferously argue against it for as long as I live, because life is sacred. The state, a lot of right-wing people on this panel often talk about the state having too much power. Well, I certainly don't want the state to have the power over whether I live or die. That is not in the states. That must not be in the states. That is personal autonomy. That's personal autonomy. If a prisoner might want to say that...
Jonathan, as long as you don't kill children or go on murder sprees, which are absolutely nailed on,
it's a human right.
You won't need to give the state that option.
Ben, if human rights don't apply to all people, then they don't apply to anybody. And it's not. I think it's a basic human right that we have the right to stay alive. Well, that's it. But that's what I say. There's a completely legitimate argument against. I understand why people will argue against that, but I will never argue.
Right.
And just in terms of the sentencing thing, I kind of just agree with what Esther was saying. Part of the death penalty, that it will just become, if people don't want to be there, they will make such a theatre of being there that it won't actually
So you disagree with the Prime Minister then, who's looking into? I don't know how he's going.
I don't know how it would work in practice. If someone is refusing to go in there, they will make their, and they've got nothing to lose. They could insult, they could mock, they could. So even if they're sort of bound in duct tape, which is obviously a grotesque thing to have to witness, they could make their protests quite visible. I'm not sure that would help anybody.
If the families wanted that, I don't see why we should be denying them that chance.
These people, the justice is done in the name of the people, not just the family. And I know the family are part of the people. However, if what looks like justice was just down to the family, then the family would be deciding the sentence. The justice is being enacted in the name of the people in the land that we reside.
So how do you think Keir Starmer will be? I mean, he's pretty much.
He's not going to do anything.
You don't believe him?
I mean, this man won't even deport people because they're saying their husbands can't handle spicy food. He's bound by his tradition as a human rights lawyer to the teeth. He's definitely not going to do.
But he was quite clear today via his spokesman. Number 10 released a statement saying the Prime Minister.
How much do you want to bet that 4 years from now nothing would have happened? Exactly.
I actually 100% agree with that. I think when they look at the practicalities of doing this, you need a tough hand. And I have no problems with people being Hannibal Lecter style, rolled out to court, strapped down. I have for those people who have killed children, and I don't want them able to get out of that court, disrupt those families again. And they need to sit there and listen to the impact of their crimes.
I think it's deeply undignified. I don't think we want to stoop as low as.
No, I think that people should be. There should certainly be. Sort of inducements and kind of coercions, but short of duct tape, I don't see how that could actually work.
If you're spending life in prison, you literally have nothing to lose. I don't think the real justice is them sitting there and having this heinous individual listen to some hurty words. I think that the justice is going up a dock and facing the guillotine. That's what justice looks like.
Well, we're going to do it the French
I just don't know why we can't have both, Esther. I don't know why we can't have both.
The French are so efficient. It's the most efficient.
They only got rid of the guillotine in like 1981.
It was. The Japanese hang people.
This is gruesome.
Can I just again pay a special mention to John Hunt and his family? As a father, I just try for a moment to put myself in his shoes. You come home, you've discovered you've lost your wife, your two daughters who at one point in their lives were innocent babies. He held them in their hands. I think about all this kind of stuff. I think what a brave man today to. I don't think I'd be here, quite frankly, if that happens.
This is why I feel like this change in the law is so important, because those people, for the rest of their lives, and I understand these people are going to be going to prison, where I think they get it far too easy in this country anyway. The people whose families are destroyed forever, every single day for the rest of their lives, they're the ones who are really living in a hell. It's not the people who've committed the crimes because they've done it with intent usually. It's the people's families, the innocent people who have to bear the suffering. So the least that can be expected is for people, those nasty, heinous individuals, to sit through and listen to their crimes and be judged in front of the families is so critical to our justice and law and order. And it's also one of the reasons we've lost shame in this country. There's a big lack of shame now, and being able to be forced to sit there in front of the people. And this is not just about murder. We're talking about rape gangs and other things where people can get out of their sentencing and be able to not be held in front of other people's families and shamed. Shame is an important part of justice, and we need to make sure we bring that back.
The point is that nothing is ever going to bring bring back the
That's
people
what I was
who've
about
been
to say.
No,
murdered.
it's not.
Nothing's ever going to change it. Look, those families,
But it's
those
not
families
just
are going
those
to
who
be
are
living in
murdered,
hell.
Jonathan.
Whatever
It's not just
happens.
those who are murdered. If you're a victim of a rape gang, for example, you've had to endure far worse than that man sitting in court might have to endure, and he also should be forced to sit there and endure that. What those poor people have gone through enough, and I think that's the bare minimum that is expected in this justice system today. Yeah, well said. Well said. Yeah, I was getting quite teary today thinking of John Hunt, his daughter, surviving daughter Amy, the rest of the family, the boyfriends of the girls who were murdered. It's just unbelievable courage it takes for, in my opinion anyway, to be able to go to court, sit there, face the guy who took your life away. So my thoughts and best wishes are with the Hunt family tonight. We will be going live to Washington, D.C. imminently, where Donald Trump is holding a business roundtable with the likes of, I think it's Tim Cook from Apple, Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan Chase. Basically, they want some answers. It's a quarterly meeting they do, but I think today they're going to want some answers about the stock markets pretty much crashing all around the world, including in the UK.
I wonder what that could be about.
So there we go. And I think Alex Armstrong's probably got a good Trump impression or two in his bag as well. Oh, you know I have.
We love to see the crash.
That's not me. That's Jonathan. It's terrible.
In
the meantime, hold your impressions on because it's the Great British Giveaway. Your chance to win £17,777 in tax-free cash. Here's all the details you need.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. Cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not one, but two sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound?
Oh my God, that's brilliant news.
For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
OK, we're going to America very shortly. The FTSE 100, the UK stock market, has had a red day, a decline for the 6th day in a row. Elon Musk in America has lost $18 billion. It's all kicking off. What will Donald Trump say about it? And, of course, about the Ukraine ceasefire as well. Back in just a tick. Don't go anywhere.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, Egypt has discovered, well, I think it was a British and Egyptian team, actually, finding the historic discovery, the long-lost tomb of King Thutmose II, the last of the lost tombs of the kings of ancient Egypt's 18th dynasty.
Yes, and it's the first royal Egyptian tomb to be discovered since King Tutankhamun's final resting place was found in 1922.
A very exciting discovery, and here to tell us all about it is the historian and author Martin Whittock. Martin, the first royal tomb since Tutankhamun.
Indeed, and identified as King Thutmose II. Other pronunciations are also available. And as you say, it's the last of the lost tombs of Egypt's 18th dynasty. They ruled between about 1550 BC and 1292 BC. It had been known before this tomb since 2022 as Tomb C4, as its occupant was then unknown. But what's happened now is parts of alabaster vessels have been found which have inscriptions bearing the name of Pharaoh Thutmose II and identifying him as the deceased king, along, interestingly, with the name of his wife, Hatshepsut. Now, she's an interesting woman because after he died, she ruled as pharaoh in her own right, one of only 2 women to do so in ancient Egyptian history. Now, the mummy of King Thutmose II was actually discovered during the 19th century at a nearby archaeological site known as Deir el-Bahari Kashet, and it's thought it was moved there after it had been looted by tomb raiders centuries ago. So the tomb is not going to give us the kind of treasures that we associate with Tutankhamun, I'm afraid, but it shows us the architecture of these royal tombs.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's breakfast.
Welcome back. Let's go live to Washington, D.C. to hear from President Donald Trump meeting with business leaders.
2% or 3%, depending on the agency. And you can almost, you're all great professionals, the top, and you can almost look at some of the agencies and see which ones had to be cut and which ones didn't. Also in terms of their importance and in terms of being current. So we saved a tremendous amount of money. And I think, I don't know if it's going to reach $1 trillion, but it's going to reach a lot. And it was an honor to have Michael there yesterday. You got to see a little bit of it. We had a conference. And a lot of investment coming into our country, much more than I've ever seen. Apple is investing $500 billion. IBM was with us yesterday, and they're investing a lot. Just companies all over. I could name them. You've read most of them, many of them. But hundreds of billions of dollars is being invested. That wouldn't have happened if I didn't win the election, number one. And I think, number two, the tariffs are having a tremendously positive impact. They will have, and they are having. We have car companies that are not building in Mexico now. They're building in the United States. Some of them, the plants were already started, and they stopped construction, and now they're going to build in the United States. It was very unfair. They'd build in Mexico and sell them across the border with no tax, no nothing. They'd take away our jobs. They'd close up places in Michigan and all over the country, and they'd build them in Mexico. In many cases, they were owned by China. Built in Mexico, owned by China. And that's all stopped now. They're all coming here. Honda is building a massive plant in different places, Indiana, South Carolina, but also in Michigan, a lot in Michigan. A lot of activity is happening. They're looking all over the place for places, and that's because there is a good spirit. There's a renewed spirit, and also, very importantly, the tariffs are, they don't want to pay 25% or whatever it may be. It may go up higher, maybe go up higher. Look, the higher it goes, the more likely it is they're going to build. And ultimately, the biggest win is not the tariff. That's a big win. That's a lot of money. But the biggest win is if they move into our country and produce jobs. That's a bigger win than the tariffs themselves. But the tariffs are going to be throwing off a lot of money to this country. And we've been ripped off for years by other countries, many, many decades. And they were doing the same thing. But I think we'll do it better. And I think we have a bigger advantage because we really are the piggy bank. They weren't.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've also mentioned rebuilding the American top priority. And I guess, what's your strategy to lower the overall cost of living, make everyday expenses more?
OK, bit of audio trouble there from the camera person in Washington. So Donald Trump there initially taking questions about, well, he mentioned that DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, where they're on track apparently to save $1 trillion, including Alex Armstrong, you'll like this, £20 million for an Iraqi Sesame Street, $8 million, cutting projects that will basically create trans mice and so on.
No, that's not true. That is true. That is fake news.
It's not fake news.
That is fake news.
Not, I've heard
it's
transgenic.
Jonathan would defend the trans mice. It's transgenic mice, not transgender mice.
Honestly.
It's transgenic.
Who cares?
Why can't, if people are going to have an opinion, at least have based it in fact.
Who cares? It's waste.
Well, people who care about facts care, Alex.
Money. Okay. People, at the end of the day, people care about the money in their back pocket. They care about where their taxes are going. They don't care if they're transgenic or transgender.
It's actually a big difference.
It's ridiculous.
It's about investigating human disease, Alex.
Let's talk about the Sesame Street in Baghdad. $20 million. Good money. Good spend.
Look, if you're asking me to. I hate these conversations. If you're asking me to defend every single dollar of spending on different projects or every pound that DFID used to spend, I'm not here to do that. What I'm here to do is defend the principle of aid. Now, what you're going to now see is basically almost a total shuttering of US aid, which is going to spell complete disaster. And this is a remarkably, extraordinarily...
We didn't want to have Iraqi Big Bird.
Alex, I can't understand how someone as decent and lovely as you are would be able to just applaud some of the poorest people in the world having their life-saving medicine and care taken away from them.
Let me explain the issue I have with this, because the problem we have with aid is that countries that get aid, and in a lot of the cases they are very corrupt countries, they receive it directly from NGOs, which are then assumed by the government, basically. The government takes over these NGOs, and then the money is funneled back into the government. And a lot of the time, the aid never gets to the people it needs to, and it's wasteful. And then those countries become dependent on that aid.
And may I add, their CIA fronts as well. Lots of great work by journalist Mike Benz in the US exposing...
So these people who supposedly get this aid, it never gets to them. And they perpetuate a cycle of poverty.
And that's not why it's being shut down either. It's not because of corruption.
There is a big problem with just how aid works, with the tide aid that a lot of Western countries have tried to do to get these governments to show evidence of where the aid is going. And then you have China just giving aid just with closed eyes, just as this is yours.
Okay.
However, USAID does do a lot of good work with a lot of endemic diseases in parts of the world. And that could actually have a knock-on effect.
You just were applauding it ending a second ago.
That could have a knock-on effect, not just, obviously, in these regions, but also in the US, if these diseases spread without actually having the funding to keep it under control.
That's important,
so it's not black and white.
What's important for the audience to know is that whilst they're making all these cuts now, they're not saying that they're not... They even openly said they may look at bringing back many elements of these departments.
Once a programme's ended, it's ended.
No, that's absolute nonsense. And you know, the government departments reissue things all the time. The point is to cut the waste immediately, so then you can look at where you can spend money. That's the problem.
It's a hammer approach, not a scalpel.
At this rate, America will be bankrupt.
Nonsense.
The UK will be bankrupt if we carry on.
Should we talk about tariffs as well? Donald Trump there, in the brief couple of seconds we heard from him, he said that the tariffs were having a tremendously positive impact.
That's the only true thing he said.
Alex, tremendously positive impact, if you could.
Tremendously positive impact, I think, actually. Not bad.
And do you know what, Jonathan? Huge. I'll say today, so Donald Trump and the United States, they whacked Canada with they doubled the tariffs on steel and aluminium to 50% because Ontario had increased electricity costs to northern US states. What happened today after that? Canada backed down and said, yeah, OK, guys, we got it. And the US is now back down, back to 25%.
But this whole thing
that's not the Canadian federal government that did that. That was Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario. So, yeah, that's... was something that he thought... Right?
Well, you know... I mean, sorry, this is unsustainable. I know this is Trump's last term. I know he wants to go big or go home. I get that. But this is not a sustainable way of doing diplomacy. And the reason why the markets are spooked, and Trump should know this as a businessman, is because they cannot plan. You cannot have a whack-a-mole strategy with tariffs and say, oh, it's 25% today, it's 50% tomorrow, we're whacking on this country, we're not. Businesses can't plan in this environment. And as someone who's run a multi-billion-dollar company, Donald Trump should know this. And that's the big problem. problem here. We know what his policy is on immigration. We know what he's planning on doing on the Department of Education. We know certain things about Trump's administration. However, on this front, the most important thing, which is the economy and tariffs, he's been completely haphazard by, and that's
yeah. And the reason is that there is no intellectual underpinning for this whatsoever. No one knows. No one knows what Trump is trying to do with Canada. Yeah, OK, fine. There's a 19th century mercantilist approach.
Right. Let me propose this theory that's going around. I've already briefly told you about it, right?
And I told you
think that Trump is just playing whack-a-mole. He doesn't know what he's doing from one day to the next.
The thing is, it's a haphazard strategy. He's trying to pressure countries to do what he wants.
Right, brace yourselves.
This is not the best way to do it.
Brace yourselves. Get a cup of tea, maybe something stronger at home, because there's this theory going around. I've got a clip as well, if we can get that clip ready. So, at the very start of his presidency this year, Donald Trump said he wanted the Federal Reserve, which is an independent body. They set the interest rates in the United States. He was putting pressure on the Fed to decrease interest rates. He was saying to Jerome Powell, who's the chair of the Fed, decrease interest rates. Jerome Powell said, no, we're independent, we'll do what we want. In this clip here, President Trump is asked, pretty much, how are you going to get the Federal Reserve to decrease and lower interest rates? And this is what he said. Look at his reaction.
Interest rates will come down.
You said that you would demand that the interest rates come down.
Well, I would.
Do you expect
I would put in a strong statement.
Do you expect the Fed to listen to you?
Yeah.
Are you going to talk to Powell about this and bringing the rates down?
At the right time, I would.
So the theory is that he has deliberately caused this this tanking of the stock market all around the world by talking about
what a clever strategy.
Because he's trying to force the Fed to lower interest rates. Jonathan?
OK, so, Ben, what you're doing is reminds me of that line from the first term where some of the Trump officials said, everyone thinks he's playing 4D chess.
He's playing 5D chess.
5D chess. Everyone's just trying to stop him eating the pieces. It's like someone trying to persuade you that their dog knows its own birthday. There's no point in trying to reason with this man. He's a total ignoramus.
Might I remind everybody that Trump has historically been correct on so many things. Remember the Germans, just like Jonathan's doing now, the Germans laughed at Trump when he warned them their reliance on Russian oil and gas was going to lead them to disaster. And look what happened next. Now,
Trump didn't know the
oil and
Putin
gas
was going to
prices, well, he clearly had a somehow better idea than the Germans did. Let me say this. America has been taken advantage of by Western countries and democracies just like our own in many cases with non-reciprocal tariffs for many, many years. In some parts, Canada has 250% tariffs on America.
That's non-quota
What Donald
stuff.
Trump is showing, which is what I think every strong sovereign country should do, is don't mess around with us. Don't mess around with us, because we're going to show you how powerful we are. And they talk a big game, these liberal Canadian Trudeau and Mark Carney. But Mark Carney, by the way, has never held office, never been elected by anybody. No, he hasn't even got a seat in the Canadian Parliament.
England was
complete globalist.
Can I read you?
Globalist? This is what it's all about. They're shocked because the globalist agenda's been rocked like a baby.
Let me give you some examples of these tariffs, the way Donald Trump argues that the United States has been stitched up. So the European Union, right, they can export all the shellfish they want to America, but the EU bans shellfish exports to from 48 states in the US. The EU also imposes a 10% tariff on imported cars. The US only has 2.5% the other way around. And a 2019 report found that across 132 countries, more than 600,000 product lines, the US exporters face higher tariffs more than two-thirds of the time.
Tariffs are a
Has he got a point?
Tariffs are a negotiating tool. Tariffs are a negotiating tool that all countries and sort of entities will use in order to secure...
It's a negotiating tool.
No,
you just nailed it.
It's a negotiating tool
while
you have them. I'd said it was a 19th century mercantilist position, the ideal position. I can't believe I'm the left-wing person on the panel arguing, the only person prepared to argue for free trade. But, you know, we live in upside-down, topsy-turvy world.
If you're facing tariffs, that are not reciprocal.
Exactly.
That's not free trade. Look at China. China's seen as a developing country. They export their products for literally dead cheap and basically dump them in African and European and American markets. And yet they never face any retaliation.
So what is the point? What is the point? What is the point? What is the point of setting up obstacles that are going to make goods in your country a lot more expensive for people? Because we know that the reason that America doesn't make things because wages are so much higher in America, and also it's going to make things expensive just as the whole supply chains.
Because what's happening is that consumers in America and in many cases in Europe are being taken advantage of by massive countries like China, who haven't, as Esther correctly pointed out, it's not free trade if the tariffs aren't reciprocal. So at the end of the day, who's losing out and who's winning? China is winning massively. We're creating global superpowers to rival us, who then become our our enemies very, very quickly.
The obstacle is to remove tariffs, but obviously in a fair...
But they don't do it back, do they?
But that's not why he's even introducing them. He hasn't even given that example.
All right. The few minutes we heard from Donald Trump there, he said the biggest win isn't the tariffs. He said the biggest win is if they move country back to the US, these companies, and they create jobs. Exactly. That is the goal of tariffs.
And it works.
It works.
It's exactly. It's not even. He said it was about fentanyl. Obviously, that was complete nonsense because Canada actually stops more fentanyl coming from the US than the US does from Canada. It's complete nonsense. Basically, he's got an idea. He's got this idea that people, if there's a trade deficit, it's because one country is subsidising the other, which is ludicrous as me saying I'm going to a supermarket and buying a good, therefore I'm subsidising the supermarket. It's trade. That's what trade is.
Why do you let your personal hate for Donald Trump, eclipse the?
I happen to think that what he does is also ridiculous.
For America.
He's not trying to do anything for America. He's trying to do it for himself.
Well, he again, in the couple of seconds we heard there from him, he said Apple's investing 500 million, IBM's investing in recent days.
That investment didn't just start when he became president.
Jonathan, if we carried on the same Obama agenda and Clinton agenda before then the Bush agenda, what happens is all those companies go to Mexico, they start their factories, then they sell back to the same people they just sacked out of all those factories and said, buy our car for 20% cheaper. And what did Mexico do? They slap a tariff on it.
Alex,
so they make a nice profit.
I'll tell you one thing.
The only people who lose out are the American people, and Donald Trump is absolutely right.
The stock market went up and up and up throughout his 4 years.
America would do this. Any American with a backbone would do this.
Goodness,
this is absolutely
This is
right
the most insane thing I've ever heard you say.
No,
the stock market that listen to people, the gods of the stock market, the stock market is completely plunged. It went up for the first 4 years of Trump's first presidency, and now it's completely crashed, Alex, and you have no answer to it. You have no answer to it.
Please. People at home can't hear you when you're both talking, especially on the radio. It just sounds awful.
Sorry, guys.
Esther, you're sat there quite patiently.
This is quite interesting
humbly.
to watch.
I'm sorry you have to sit next to these.
No, it's fine. That's fine.
We never normally argue like this.
What do you make of this? I mean, this is just one example. I picked this one out because it was quite shocking. What do you make of the fact that the EU can export as many shellfish to the United States as they want, and yet when it's the other way around, the EU bans from 48 states?
I mean,
is that not justified for tariffs?
Bloc in the world, and they don't even hide it. I mean, that's how they've always operated. Look, I think in the broadest sense of what's going on here, Donald Trump needs to present a plan. Like you would in any business. You need to say what your objectives are. You need to be very clear. You need to give businesses the ability to plan. Please tone down the whole bullish Canada's going to become the 51st state. That's unnecessary. What are you trying to achieve? When do you want to achieve it by? And let's judge you on the results, because unlike Obama, Donald Trump knows that he was only elected based on whether he can provide results, not based on any sort of universal love for him or the fact that he's changing the face of America or anything like that. The American people want a secure borders and a thriving economy, and if he can't deliver on that, then he has failed.
And lower egg prices and lower grocery, and this is the whole thing.
That's because there are not enough chickens, because the Biden administration culled loads of chickens.
There's a cost of living crisis, and now costs are going up.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Jonathan, because inflation is absolutely tumbling thanks to since Trump's come into office. Have a look, pull up the graphs. Ben will find them. Egg prices coming down. They were soaring. Yes, they absolutely are.
You need to
read the data. In fact, maybe bring that to the audience in the next hour, because they are coming down quite dramatically.
What produces eggs?
Well, I don't think that was what the issue was. I can't remember exactly why.
That's why the prices have gone up. It's literally supply and demand.
But anyway, the cost of eggs is coming down. I don't know what it is, but I was reading the articles today, and inflation is dropping dramatically. So Trump is doing right things.
Prices are going up.
Guess what happens when Doge is complete? Everyone's getting a $5,000 rebate.
Okay.
He's planning to give every American $5,000 back to give them a rebate for the taxes they've invested.
I suppose, do you agree with the whole Canada and Greenland thing as well? Do you taking the Panama
Canal? No, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that, but I think he's a smart businessman. He puts his panel, he puts his anchor right at the very craziest end of the table. Eventually, people end up meeting him in the middle and agreeing to his terms, as we saw Canada do today.
Esther, what do you make of this theory that I did float there, and I played that clip as well, where Donald Trump is, pretty much hinting that he's got a way to get Jerome Powell from the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates? Do you give any credence to that theory?
5D chess thing. Listen, I'll see it I'll believe it when I see it. I think, by the way, that's the approach that everyone should take. If it actually yields results, fine. But so far, we're just seeing unsettled markets. We're seeing whole lot of sort of bullying talk, and quite frankly, it's quite uncomfortable to witness. But also, if there are no results at the end of it, it's just like we've just elected a child into office.
Where does this leave, Jonathan, the UK? Because it's now having an effect on the FTSE, 6 days of decline, a sea of selling. So this isn't just affecting the S&P and the Nasdaq in the United States. It's going global now. It's affecting us.
Yeah, well, I mean, right now the pound is getting quite weak against the euro, but actually, interestingly, gaining strength against the dollar.
Yeah.
So that's quite interesting as well. I think that's also a signal a vote of confidence in the EU after the euro got a lot stronger. The euro became a lot stronger. The euro became a lot stronger a few days ago when Germany announced a huge sort of investment in its security. I think that was the trigger for the euro to go up in value. So. In terms of the UK, unfortunately, we're in a position where we've always been, where when the US sneezes, the world catches the cold. We are not immune, and we cannot be immune from the world's greatest economy, which is also, one of our biggest trading partners. So when you have a complete lunatic in charge who has no idea what he's doing, and he changes his mind every day, because coming back to what we were saying ago, well, I'll tell you, let's have an example of the tariffs then, because as Esther was saying, there's no certainty for business, but it also, what I don't understand is how it makes Trump himself look strong or confident or competent. Because if you are announcing a policy and you announce it and then you kind of see that it's having a terrible effect, then you withdraw it the next day and then you reintroduce it 2 days later and then you withdraw it and then you change your mind again the day after, it doesn't make you look strong or good or decent or competent. It makes you look like you don't know what you're doing because you don't.
All right, we're trying to get that feedback to the US. In the meantime, let's take a quick break and when we get back, we will continue with the show. Back in just a tick.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Storm Yana brings heavy rain and also risk of thunderstorms to western and central parts of the Mediterranean, but further east it's mostly settled. Outbreaks of rain just starting to clip into parts of Tenerife, also southern parts of Portugal and Spain, but the bulk of the heaviest rain across central parts of the Mediterranean, where we're still seeing a risk of thunderstorms as we head through into Wednesday. Largely settled across Greece, though, and remaining settled for the rest of the week, and this is where we'll see the best of the temperatures, but elsewhere still a risk of showers and temperatures in the mid-teens.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Angela, what were the benefits you saw working on Strictly? What actually was this revelation to you that you should do more?
Well, I tell you what it was, mainly. It was because I think I've been dancing since I was 5, one way and another.
Yes. You? Yeah.
And I'm now 80, so 75 years I've been dancing. So I've always known, as have dance teachers all over the country, that dance is actually the best form of exercise you can possibly do, because it's not just good for your body, but it's also great for your mind, for your mental health, for your mind, for your happiness, for your outlook on life. And of course, you have to use your brain to remember what you're doing. So it's great for all sorts of things. And so I've known that, and dance teachers have known that, but it's always been sort of under the radar when people have thought about how do I get fit. They sort of think automatically about going to a gym or doing a park
on a treadmill,
doing all of that. So when I was doing Strictly, I got wonderful reaction from the public. I mean, I was just overwhelmed with a lot of people saying that I'd inspired them to think about dance. And I thought, how can I put these two things together then? And I was listening to Chris Whitty on radio, he's the Chief Medical Officer for England, saying that because the National Health Service is having such financial difficulties, it would help if we all took more responsibility for our own health by, he said, play football, go to a gym. Why not dance, he said, and I thought, that's what I can do. So because I've been involved with dance for a long time, I got in touch with every one of the dance organisations in the country, the ones who look after ballroom dancing, Latin, ballet, street dance, everything, all of them, and all the ballet companies, all the dance companies, and said, if we can get a national day of dance to get that message across, get dance teachers to open their doors and say, come and see what dance can do for you.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now, as we've already been hearing tonight, President Donald Trump's trade war escalated today after the US president announced plans to double tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium from 25% to 50%. The White House tonight has abandoned those plans after Canada backed down with a sting on electricity for northern US states. But it will do little to help massive concerns about a recession after the US stock market plunged yesterday. Also had a bad day today, and also the FTSE 100 in the UK as well. The S&P 500 yesterday suffered the worst single-day drop since September 2022. To find out what this all means for the UK, for you, me, our bank balances and our wallet and investments, I'm joined now by the entrepreneur and podcast host, Rob Moore. Rob, good evening. Thank you. First of all, whilst I've got you, I'm not sure if you heard the previous panel conversation, but I floated this theory that Donald Trump is deliberately tanking the markets with these tariffs because he wants Jerome Powell at the Federal Reserve, to lower interest rates. Do you give that any weight?
Oh, you're so sceptical. One thing I will say in all these maneuverings is these seem like very classic power negotiation tactics to me. I never believed there would be a 50% tariff. It's just too much. And that probably would drop the market further. So it looks like a lot of brinkmanship to me. But one can neither confirm nor deny if it's intentional.
OK, well, the aftermath is definitely real. The UK, the FTSE 100 has suffered, I think, 6 days now on the trot of selling deep into the red. Likewise, US stock markets. What does that leave? What does that mean for us in the UK? Where does that leave us?
Well, I mean, it has been bullish markets for a long time, and you know the FTSE and the S&P have looked like maybe a correction was due to come. I think it's temporary. You know, markets move all the time. I know everyone's getting really scared, but, you know, professional investors will just hold strong. S&P 500, FTSE 100, it'll keep going up. It has for a decade. So I think a lot of it is fear and momentary. I think people should just hold strong.
OK, and what do you think, if anything, the UK government should do? Do you think Sir Keir Starmer would be giving the White House a call and saying, guys, what are you doing here? It's not just affecting you in the United States. Your trade war now is affecting UK investors, UK pension contributors and so on, pension funds.
I don't think Keir Starmer has the mettle to do that, does he? Do you think he's going to call up Trump and tell Trump what to do?
Well, yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. I mean, he did earn some plaudits, though, for his performance in the Oval Office when he went to visit him the other week.
Yeah, he did, but I'm sorry, I'm quite sceptical on Keir Starmer. I think he's quite a far-left socialist. I don't really think he has the...
What on earth makes you say that?
Well, look at the state of the UK and look how much all the taxes have gone up, and then, oh, council tax won't go up and then it goes up, and, oh, we won't affect the workers, but everything affects the workers. So, yeah, I'm sceptical. I don't think that Keir Starmer has any interest on improving the UK economy. I don't.
OK, and where do you see, just finally, where do you see the UK economy going forward in terms of, I mean, there was a report today about house prices alone saying that there was lots of fear and uncertainty and doubt, FUD as they call it, in the markets about the future of house prices. I mean, for example, let's focus on that for just a second. Where do you see that going?
Yeah, I'm bearish about the future of the UK economy and the UK stock market and the UK housing market. I think since lockdown, when probably, 800 billion, $1 trillion maybe, was artificially pumped in, that all has to be paid back. The cost of living, I think, relatively is the lowest since the Second World War in terms of your spending power. I think the economy is a mess, and I do think a recession is due. I do, and I'm quite bearish about it.
OK. All right, Rob, thanks for that. Rob Moore, entrepreneur and podcast host, appreciate it. Coming up next, get this, traumatised teachers in Scotland are pleading for self-defence lessons. Unbelievable. That's amid an appalling rise in classroom violence from children. Just what on earth is going on in our schools? And why aren't parents stepping in? That's next.
Hello, very good evening to you. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Now, it is going to be a bit of a chilly night ahead, and with that then, there's the risk of some frost, even some icy patches, as there will be quite a few showers around. A lot of the showers in association with a cold front that's making its way southwards, so we will see some showery pulses across parts of Northern Ireland through the end of the day, and also feeding into parts of perhaps the Midlands, but also across Wales. Quite a few showery outbreaks here, some sleet or snow over some higher ground possible. Also plenty of showers piling in across eastern parts of Scotland, northeast England, and again some sleet or snow likely here. Temperatures are going to drop, and where we get clear skies, dipping to around, if not a bit below freezing. So there could be a bit of frost around first thing tomorrow morning, also some icy stretches, so do take care on the roads. Otherwise, as we go through the morning, in the west of Scotland, it's looking largely dry, quite bright as well. Further east, more showers to come and a bit of a breeze as well, adding to the chilly feel to things. Mostly dry across Northern Ireland, but also across northern England. In the east, it's looking pretty showery. Across the Midlands and much of Wales, a largely bright, fine start to the day, but in the far south of England, it is going to be cloudier and there will be some showery outbreaks, all in association with that front that pushed through overnight. Through the day, I am expecting more showers tomorrow than we saw through today, and with that then there's a greater chance of some heavy ones, even a few rumbles of thunder perhaps, and some more sleet and snow. Over modest higher ground we could see a bit settling to lower levels. A few flurries are possible. Temperatures are going to be lower than today, and that makes it feel pretty chilly, especially when you factor in that wind. As we go through Thursday then, more showers across eastern parts. Further west, a greater chance of staying dry because there is high pressure to the west of us, but that high pressure is going to take quite a while to push its way in. So Friday is still going to be showery for many, but eventually we see something a little bit drier, more settled in time for the weekend, when we should have some sunshine around.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now, terrified Scottish teachers have demanded self-defence classes amid a shocking rise in classroom violence. Head teachers at schools in Aberdeenshire and Edinburgh have received requests from teachers for extra safety training. And indeed, recent research from teachers' unions has found that 83% of members have observed a significant rise in violent and abusive behaviour among pupils in the past year. Well, unbelievable. I'm joined now by former advisor to the policy unit at number 10 Downing Street and retired head teacher Chris McGovern. Chris, good evening. Thanks for joining me. This is, I'm trying to think back to my school days some 20 odd years ago. There were a few wrong-uns here and there. One lad when I was in middle school brought some scissors in to try and attack another boy, not a teacher. But now we're seeing teachers under attack.
Yeah, you know, I've taught for 35 years. When I was teaching, we used to have corporal punishment. Actually, there was caning, that's all gone. But now we have corporal punishment in schools, but it's inflicted on teachers rather than by teachers. And it's a pretty serious situation. It's a terrible advert for the profession. And of course, if you want to enter the classroom these days, in some cases at least, yeah, a self-defense training would be quite useful. But I think we need to actually look at the situation. Why are we getting so many outbreaks of violence in our schools? And I think to some extent, authority has been undermined. I remember many years ago, one of the Conservative education ministers saying to me, you know, in any school, and he was a former head teacher, in any school, Chris, someone's going to be in charge, and it helps if it's the head teacher. But these days, you know, sometimes we have the children in charge, and there has been a breakdown of order. But you have to look at the underlying causes, and to some extent, the youngsters, particularly when they get into their teens, and perhaps 14, 15 and 16, are doing courses which don't relate to their abilities. They, many cases, should be doing vocational training. And only a few weeks ago, very recently, the Conservative Party in Scotland actually said that school should allow children to leave at 14. That caused a big row in Scotland, but in fact, there was some sense behind it, because what the Conservatives were saying in Scotland was that at the age of 14, children should be doing apprenticeships and vocational training, if that's what their inclination is. So we've got a real problem here, but we've got to look at the underlying causes, and I think it's to do actually with children being disenchanted and switched off.
Yeah, I understand that. I think it'd be a great idea for some kids to be. I mean, when I was at school, there were certainly some children who just weren't academic, but they were great in woodwork. They were promising tradies, chippies, electricians, and so on. So I think that's a great idea. But is that, regardless, is that an excuse for violence towards teachers?
Never an excuse, and therefore what we need to do is to protect the majority of children. If you talk to young people, the vast majority of young people want to learn. They don't want kids coming in and disrupting the lessons. So what I would say, and I know there'll be some howls of protest, we need to bring back, probably for extreme examples of violence in the classroom. We've had teachers murdered, we've had kids murdered. We need to bring back ball stalls. Now that sounds a bit harsh, but you know, we got rid of those back in the several decades ago, and nowadays, and we have young offenders institutions instead, and so forth. But you know, they still have these borstal schools in India, in parts of India. And I looked at the figures before I came on your show, and I noticed that in Britain we have these young offenders institutes, and 75% of kids who go into those young offenders institutes, they come out and they recommit crimes. In Chennai, in India, 1% come out of their borstal schools and recommit a crime.
Wow.
So there may be a case for, in really serious situations, for reintroducing borstals, or also what we would call approved schools. We've got to get these troublemakers out of the classroom. We've got to protect the majority, but not neglect those kids, of course, who are taken out of the mainstream. They're important. They've got to be looked after, but protect the majority.
I also think national service is a good idea as well. A couple of years, getting some discipline into young people as well. It only takes one idiot, one class clown. And again, I just remember back to my school days, for the whole lesson to be disrupted, for the whole class to be denied of an education and a decent hour of learning because somebody's playing up. So yeah, I think you got some points there, Chris. Chris McGovern, thank you for your time tonight. You were the former advisor to the policy unit at number 10 Downing Street and a retired head teacher, of course. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Coming up, over 1,000 Christians have been slaughtered over the past week in Syria. But where's the outrage? These new guys who toppled Assad, they're meant to be the so-called moderate jihadis. Well, they don't sound very moderate anymore, do they? And why on earth did the government lift some sanctions on Syria last week? We also gave £50 million in aid to Syria as well. That's coming next. This is Patrick Christys Tonight with me, Ben Leo.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good evening to you. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Now, it is going to be a bit of a chilly night ahead, and with that then, there's the risk of some frost, even some icy patches, as there will be quite a few showers around. A lot of the showers in association with a cold front that's making its way southwards, so we will see some showery pulses across parts of Northern Ireland through the end of the day, and also feeding into parts of perhaps the Midlands, but also across Wales. Quite a few showery outbreaks here, some sleet or snow over some higher ground possible. Also plenty of showers piling in across eastern parts of Scotland, northeast England, and again some sleet or snow likely here. Temperatures are going to drop, and where we get clear skies, dipping to around, if not a bit below freezing. So there could be a bit of frost around first thing tomorrow morning, also some icy stretches, so do take care on the roads. Otherwise, as we go through the morning, in the west of Scotland, it's looking largely dry, quite bright as well. Further east, more showers to come and a bit of a breeze as well, adding to the chilly feel to things. Mostly dry across Northern Ireland, but also across northern England in the east, it's looking pretty showery. Across the Midlands and much of Wales, a largely bright, fine start to the day, but in the far south of England, it is going to be cloudier and there will be some showery outbreaks, all in association with that front that pushed through overnight. Through the day, I am expecting more showers tomorrow than we saw through today, and with that then there's a greater chance of some heavy ones, even a few rumbles of thunder perhaps, and some more sleet and snow. Over modest higher ground we could see a bit settling to lower levels. A few flurries are possible. Temperatures are going to be lower than today, and that makes it feel pretty chilly, especially when you factor in that wind. As we go through Thursday then, more showers across eastern parts. Further west, a greater chance of staying dry because there is high pressure to the west of us, but that high pressure is going to take quite a while to push its way in. So Friday is still going to be showery for many, but eventually we see something a little bit drier, more settled in time for the weekend when we should have some sunshine around.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. Cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not one, but two sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound? For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
It's 10 p.m. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo. Oh dear, David Lammy sent 50 million in aid, and the likes of Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart even went to Syria to meet the new regime. But now, the so-called moderate jihadis who toppled Assad are executing Christians in the street. So where are the marchers? Where is the outrage? Also tonight.
It must be really incredible to be part of building, actually here, not just building houses, but building a community.
Farmers whacked again by the government as Angela Rayner is revealed to be plotting a land grab that would see the forced sale of their fields in bargain basement compulsory purchase orders. And talking of being fleeced, punters are absolutely whacked on day one of the Cheltenham Festival as the bookies finish quids in. I'll be joined by former top jockey and trainer Brendan Powell for his take on the greatest show on turf.
I'm starting OnlyFans.
Yeah. And as a Harry Potter star takes to OnlyFans to pay her bills, how much would it take you to get your kit off online? Joining me on the panel tonight is broadcaster and columnist Esther Krakow, GB News presenter Alex Armstrong, and the journalist Jonathan Liss. Christians are being persecuted and executed in Syria. So why the radio silence? First, though, your news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Ben, thank you. Good evening. Your top story this hour. Ukraine has agreed to accept a US proposal for a 30-day ceasefire with Russia after talks concluded today in Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, the US says it will immediately restore intelligence sharing and security assistance to Ukraine, according to a joint statement. The US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, spoke after the meeting, saying the ball is now in Russia's court.
Take this offer now to the Russians, and we hope that they'll say yes, to peace. The ball's now in their court. And but again, the president's objective here is, number one, above everything else, he wants the war to end. And I think today Ukraine has taken a concrete step in that regard. We hope the Russians will reciprocate.
And US President Donald Trump has spoken in the last few hours on the war, on the Ukraine war ceasefire deal.
Get the Russians to agree?
I'll talk to Vladimir Putin, yeah. I want to get, look, that's the other, it takes two to tango, as they say, right? So hopefully he'll also agree, and I really think that would be 75% of the way. The rest is getting it documented and, you know, negotiating land positions, etc.
So you'll talk to him this week about the deal?
So, yeah.
So and when do you anticipate meeting him in person?
In place on the Ukrainian side, how close do you think then you are to a total ceasefire with
Well, I hope it'll be over the next few days. I'd like to see. I know we have a big meeting with Russia tomorrow, and some great conversations hopefully will ensue. The people have done a great job. Marco Rubio's been great.
Meanwhile, back in the UK, Sir Keir Starmer has hailed what he called the remarkable breakthrough in talks. The Prime Minister, who has led European efforts to build a peacekeeping mission in the event an agreement to the end of the war is reached, said the ball is now in Russia's court. The White House has confirmed that the 50% tariff planned for tomorrow on some Canadian metals has been cancelled. Instead, a previously planned 25% tariff will still be enacted. Donald Trump had told reporters outside the White House this afternoon that he was rethinking his decision to double tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium after Ontario cancelled a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to 3 US states. In other news, a 13-year-old girl has been charged with murder over the death of a mother of 3 following a fire at a home in Wellingborough. That's according to Northamptonshire Police. The force said the child, who cannot be named for legal reasons, has also been charged with arson and with attempt to endanger life. Formal identification is yet to be confirmed, but the woman is believed to be 43-year-old Marta Berdenarcis, who was found dead at the scene. Triple killer Carl Clifford, who had been given a whole life order for crossbow and knife murders of ex-partner Louise Hunt, her sister Hannah Hunt and her mother Carol Hunt. 26-year-old Clifford, who refused to attend his sentencing today, was also found guilty of raping Louise before he killed her. Mr Justice Benathan described Clifford as a man soaked in self-pity who held utter contempt for women. The 3 women were the wife and daughters of BBC racing commentator John Hunt, who earlier told Cambridge Crown Court Clifford killed 3 beautiful mockingbirds. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. It's been 3 months since President Assad was toppled and forced to flee Syria and swiftly replaced by the Islamist and al-Qaeda-linked group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. And despite deep concern about how Christians in Syria would be treated by the new regime, global leaders, including our own Prime Minister, made assurances that civilians and minorities would be protected.
I welcome the fact that Assad has gone. The Syrian people had to put up with his brutal regime for far, far too long. We're talking to regional allies. It's very important now that there's a political settlement, a political way forward, and it's very, very important that we emphasise that civilians and minorities must be protected in this process, but very, very pleased that Assad has fallen.
Even the ultimate bleeding heart Liberals, Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart, they jetted out to interview Syria's new president, Abu Jalani. Well, fast forward 3 months, and according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, security services there and affiliated gunmen have murdered hundreds of civilians, largely from Christian and Alawite religious minorities. Government forces are said to be targeting minority groups as revenge against the former regime. President Assad himself was from the minority Alawite community. So I'm asking, where is the outrage? Where are the marches on the streets of London and the continual reports from the mainstream media? Why is nobody condemning the atrocities? Foreign Secretary David Lammy even lifted sanctions on some Syrian assets last week, including the Central Bank of Syria, making the UK, unbelievably, or maybe not so, the first country in the entire world to do so. He also gave £50 million of British taxpayer money in aid to Syria in December. Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. Columnist and broadcaster Esther Kraku, GB News presenter Alex Armstrong, and political commentator and journalist Jonathan Liss. Welcome back, panel. Esther, what's your take on this? Christians being executed. Some of the videos online, which of course we can't show on TV, I've sat for a couple of hours watching them, they're horrific. But Christians are being murdered and executed in the streets by the moderate jihadis that our politicians and even some journalists were happy to cheer in back in December.
No call for asylum. People that are too busy defending Islamists probably can't find Syria on a map. Look, the double standards is very clear. No one talks about sort of Christians being murdered in northern Nigeria by Boko Haram, or the girls that are subjected to rape and murder out there. And this is another case of double standards. It's also why people that seem to have strong opinions on parts of the world that they don't really know very much about should really think twice before they make quite extravagant statements online. Because if you're not willing to put your money where your mouth is, when something like this happens, how can you justify it? We're handing out asylum to able-bodied men coming from God knows where on boats. But what about the families, the children, the women of these murdered Christians in Syria that have just literally been murdered for their religion? What happens to them? Why don't they get pushed to the front of the queue?
Jonathan,
because they don't have $3 to bribe people smugglers in Europe.
It's a great point. Jonathan's screwing his face up, though. I'm not sure why.
Well, because the thing is, we've treated it as either or, and it's completely ludicrous, right? We have common sense. There's a reason why, if we're talking about asylum, the people at the front of the queue should be Afghan women who are the prime targets of sexual violence and a barbaric regime in places like Afghanistan. But we don't talk about that. We're sitting there busy defending men that have the ability to bribe people smugglers and cross the channel that we don't know where they're from.
He's defending any of these people. I don't know why we're suddenly turning this into a discussion about asylum.
We're talking about who deserves to be given asylum in a country
this conversation is about
guess what? People
outrage
are being persecuted for the fact that they're Christian or for the fact that they're women or children.
And I also don't know why we're saying these people are Christian. I think the majority of people who've been murdered, according to reports I read, have been Alawites who are Muslims.
Lots of minorities, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know why. I'm very uncomfortable with the idea that because someone is Christian, their life is maybe worth more and it's more newsworthy or dangerous or serious when they are killed as opposed to a Shia Muslim.
The reason there's not more concern because they're Christian, but we are, by nature, apparently meant to be a Christian country, so it only makes sense that we look out for people who share our values.
That's a horrible argument, Ben. We should be outraged. It's a horrible argument. We should be outraged by anyone, outraged by the murder of anyone. Doesn't matter what religion they are.
We are, but I'm talking about
we're talking about asylum.
We're talking about asylum.
We're not talking about asylum.
You just said you were sat there confused as to why Esther was talking about asylum, and she was saying...
I'm not any less outraged if an innocent person is murdered.
I'm not saying you are. I'm saying why are we saying any Christians here?
Well, because Christians are being persecuted around the world and no one has anything to say about it.
That's not true. That's not true either.
Really? Where are the marches?
People have been talking about persecution
for weeks at a time.
I've been involved. Since I started working in politics. I've been.
Well, guess what? You're rare. You're one of the rare ones. You're one of the rare ones that actually gets up and puts your money where your mouth is. But the vast majority of hypocrites that have a lot to say about the fact that Britain is not doing enough to defend certain people from certain parts of the world. Guess what? They don't have the same vigour and zeal to line up in the streets to defend Christians being persecuted around the world.
No one is defending.
Have you seen any Christian marches? Have you seen any?
No one is defending people murdering in cold blood anybody in the streets of Syria. That's obviously a terrible, terrible thing to do. I thought the conversation that we were planning to have is about the UK government's response to the government of Syria, the government in Syria, and how far the government is responsible. I think it's very much a separate issue about how far the government is responsible for the these killings and whether the UK should change its position vis-à-vis the new government. I think it's important that the government should be given a chance to show its colours. Obviously, if it transpires that the government is involved in sort of targeted massacres, then the UK government will have to reconsider its position.
I've not heard a peep from Keir Starmer, from anybody. David Lammy put a tweet out maybe on Sunday talking about civilian deaths. He couldn't bring himself to say the word Christian.
No, he couldn't.
But they were predominantly Muslim, Ben. That's the whole point.
Well, no, I mean, look, the reality is that there is seemingly, from my perspective, an intifada against Christian people across parts of the Middle East. Yes, there is. Across parts of Africa. 4,500 Christians were killed last year, 69% of them in Nigeria. There is definitely an intifada against Christian people happening in that country. That is without a doubt happening. And we're blind to it because it's not convenient politically for specific politicians on the left to talk about that because it will upset certain preferences, let's put it that way, certain groups that the Labour Party may not want to talk about. David Lammy has failed to address the fact there is Christian persecution happening across the Middle East and across parts of Africa. Let's talk about this terrorist regime that has taken over, because some of us said...
Well, I thought they were moderate jihadis.
Well, I said it here on...
Because Assad wasn't a terrorist.
Assad
wasn't literally gassed his own people.
I said it here on GB News when this whole thing happened. I said, I hope Assad crushes them. Not that I think Assad is any better, but these people are going to be far, far worse because they are religious extremists. And I'd rather have someone who is... We made this mistake all over the world.
But they so far haven't gassed their own people.
We crushed every dictator in the Middle East, and look what happened. All we did was create an entire continent's worth of extremists.
What do you make?
We
didn't do this.
We did. We supported the crushing. We didn't get rid of Assad. We did, Jonathan. We did support them.
Those are Syrian people. Why can't you give agencies to Syrian people?
We helped systematically bomb and remove multiple dictators. We tried to.
Okay,
we literally didn't. There was a vote against it in Parliament in 2013.
What do you make of the...
Because he gassed his own people with chemical weapons.
Trust me, I'm not saying he's any better.
He was a terrorist.
But what I dislike more is ideological extremists. Religious extremists are extremely dangerous, particularly when thousands of them are then coming in.
When you are responsible for the murder of hundreds of thousands of your own people, it actually is probably of little importance to those people, whether it's on a religious or secular grounds.
You're an intelligent guy, so the reasoning behind keeping Assad in power is the same with Gaddafi in Libya. Look what happened in Libya. They created a vacuum. They bombed the hell out of the place.
Yeah,
the French went in, Hillary Clinton went there mocking it, and what's left? Yep. Libya is a slave of the world.
Exactly. Ben, I'm not a neoconservative. I'm not a liberal. I'm not even a liberal interventionist. I think that the vast majority of those interventions have proved catastrophic. The Libya thing, I mean, I don't like defending David Cameron. You had a very, very difficult position at that time because you had Gaddafi saying that he was going to go from door to door massacring people. And in those situations, you have to make sort of very, very quick decisions about whether you're going to intervene to try and prevent genocide, effective genocide from taking place. And, you know, the complaint, you know, and you have Bosnian people today who are still very, very angry with the West for not intervening sooner in the Bosnian war, and you have Kosovans who say that, you know, we didn't do enough to help them, etc.
The problem with becoming the world police is that we are then the victim of attacks afterwards. We are the victims of terrorism afterwards because we have to. Then the liberal lefties, when they get into power, start welcoming them in those people that we bombed in the millions.
And do you know what happens?
Into countries. What happens? We get Germany. Every couple of weeks there is a terrorist attack against innocent civilians from radicalised people who've been allowed to come and open.
The majority, like a lot of those people, have been right-wing extremists in Germany. The guy from Saudi Arabia was a right-wing extremist.
That's just moronic immigration policy. I think one thing that's clearly staring us all in the face is the fact that the government gave £50 million worth of our money to a regime that was linked to Al-Qaeda before they decided to...
It wasn't directly through the regime.
To basically fill the power.
It was in aid. It was aid, air quotes. But we all know how NGOs operate. The same way that so much aid went to Hamas.
Anyone could see that backing or giving any sort of assistance to a terrorist group linked to Al-Qaeda was not a smart idea.
OK, last word, Alex, on Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell flying to Syria for their podcast.
Should have stayed there.
What's it called? The Rest is Politics. I mean, look, they're not here to defend themselves or talk about it, but what do you make of the fact they flew to Syria, sat down with Jelani for a pretty softball interview?
How did they even get there? They fly through...
I think the reality is that they just prove how out of touch they are time and time again, don't they? And they've got every single major call wrong in the last... Since that podcast started, they couldn't... But it also exposes their globalist agenda. This man, the only thing he did was put on a suit and met them, and all of a sudden they're clapping like that, clapping.
It was a few months ago, so it was far before any of this this recently.
Ben, I called this regime out for being a terrorist group before it even got into power, when it was marching towards the capital of Syria. These people profess to be professionals, but they clearly don't know what they're talking about.
I would say, could you imagine if GB News did that?
Exactly.
If you or I, Patrick, flew to Syria for a softball interview with Jelani, sat down, and then months later we see what we're seeing now on the streets of Syria. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
We'd be shut down.
Yeah, absolutely. Front page Guardian newspaper. GB News presenter flies out to meet terrorist regime leader. Of course, it's different rules for people like Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell, though, isn't it?
Yeah. OK. All right. Thank you, panel. We want to make your spring spectacular in our latest Great British giveaway. Your chance to win £17,777 in tax-free cash. Here's all the details you need to win.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. Cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not one, but two sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound?
Oh my God, that's brilliant news.
For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
OK, good luck to you on that. Coming up next, the government's handed councils the power to force farmers, yes, they're the targets again, to sell their land for rock-bottom prices. Compulsory purchase orders. Farmers apparently being stitched up again by this government. What is their agenda? Is this just the next phase of Labour's attack on our hard-working British farmers? That's next.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And the BAFTA-winning actress, Daisy May Cooper, isn't holding back about what she thinks about Shakespeare. She thinks it's time to ditch the lot.
Well, comparing his plays to studying EastEnders in 600 years' time, she says that kids would be better off learning from TV dramas. But is she onto something, or is the Bard still a class act?
Sometimes it's better not to say anything, isn't it? Anyway, joining us to discuss this is the lifestyle journalist and parenting expert Annette Kello. Annette, is studying Shakespeare these days the same as if you forced children in 600 years' time to study Pat Butcher?
Exactly. I mean, Pat Butcher's earrings to start with, maybe studying those in 600 years. But I think while she has a point that it is very old, I think we need to bring it up to speed and not scrap it, but reimagine it so that people today can learn it. The plays are quite long, which might be quite hard for kids to decipher. But I do think there's something in keeping it. We know that there's loads of words. I think it's 1,700 words that Shakespeare invented. And come on, which ones do you know? Swagger?
We were talking...
Addiction?
This is cheating, because we were talking a bit about this in the break. But assassination, critic, majestic...
Swagger.
and phrases, like, it's all Greek to me. I mean, these things that just roll off the tongue. I mean, it's so important, actually, for understanding our own language more than anything else.
Exactly, and actually Jay-Z quoted that he takes inspiration from Shakespeare because apparently there's something to do with the rhythm that is similar to rapping. So I think things like that can be a really good lesson for children to kind of get in the zone with it, because it's quite hard to learn otherwise.
I mean, I can imagine it's very hard to teach Shakespeare these days to young children, because they are the TikTok generation.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now, in yet another attack on the British agricultural industry, easy for me to say, farmers could be forced to sell their land for a fraction of its value as part of the government's ambitious push to build 1.5 million homes by 2029. Under new measures in Labour's planning and infrastructure bill, councils will be given greater power to seize land for new homes, hospitals or schools. But they'll only have to pay the land's current value rather than what it might be worth if it was developed on. But speaking to GB News earlier today, the Housing and Planning Minister Matthew Pennycook denied farmers were being targeted.
It won't be for ministers to decide what land is unlocked. It will be for local authorities in any particular area to use these powers where they think it's appropriate. But we do want to make it easier for them to do so. We want to make the process more efficient. We want to reduce administration costs so that we can get greater use of these powers and enable more land to be unlocked, more land to be assembled effectively. But I see the real potential for these powers primarily in urban areas on previously developed brownfield land where regeneration projects can come forward, often really effectively.
OK, I'm joined by farmer James McGregor on this now. James, good evening. Thank you for joining me. Some people are suggesting, and call me conspiratorial, that this is a retaliatory attack on farmers for daring to protest against the inheritance tax.
I think, first of all, we have to acknowledge that we do need more houses built in this country, but that cannot be at the detriment of agricultural land. You know, we have a government at the moment who are banging the drum constantly for national security. History has taught us time and time again that national security and food security are linked. You know, if we cannot feed ourselves, then there's no point us looking at increasing our budget to 2.5 in defence because, as I say, food security is national security.
Yeah.
You know, you take the land away from farmers, we can't feed this nation. You know, like I say, houses have to be built, but that cannot be at a detriment of agricultural land.
So do you agree or disagree with the theory? I mean, what do you think of it, the theory that the government is just ramping up its attack on farmers because of this inheritance tax raid?
I think it's clearly true. You know, the inheritance tax, I think, is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to it. You can see everything they're doing is trying to grab land from the agricultural industry. They want to build houses on our land. We want to produce food. You know, that's the sum of it, really.
So what happens, James, practically? The government can come to you, Angela Rayner, I'm sure it wouldn't be her, but she could come knocking at your door and saying, James, we need your field. We need your fields because we need to build some homes on it. We're going to compulsory purchase order your field and we're going to give you the value that it is today. What's the issue with that? The argument is that you would sell your land based on the future value. If a developer wants to come and build 400 homes, surely you'd price the land based on a fraction of what the homes would be worth, no?
Of course we would, and the fact is that land, we farm that land. We don't get the return on the land that many other people would with that sort of investment. So, you know, the land, we're kind of custodians of the land. We look after the land. We farm the land. That's all we want to do is feed people. These people want return from that land that agriculture can't give. You know, and that's what it's about. It's about, you know, making more money from land instead of looking into the security of the country and looking at feeding people.
What's your message?
We have to get away from the idea that this is going to affect farmers. You know, if we can't feed the nation, we have America who's putting tariffs on everything. We're going to have, we're looking at economic wars throughout the world. If we can't produce food ourselves, then there's only one person that's going to affect, and that's the consumer. It's going to hit everyone in their pocket. It's not the farmer, it's everyone that it affects.
What's your message then, James, to the government, to Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, to Angela Rayner? What's your message to them?
Well, I mean, first of all, for once, it would be nice if they would actually sit down and talk to us. They seem to have an inability or a desire, and non-desire to even talk to us. It's clear they have an agenda, and they're just going to push that through. But you know, we're important. It's important to everyone that we produce food in this country. It affects everyone. It affects everyone's pocket. It affects their voters. Tory voters, every voter is affected by the cost of food. You know, just support the farmers. That's all we're asking. Just sit down, speak to us and support us.
When's the next process, James? Do you know?
Not at the moment, but I'm sure there's one planned very soon.
When are you guys, and look, I think you'd have lots of public support, and I ask the farmers the same question every time you're on with me. When are you going to really turn the screw with the government and start threatening supply lines? Because it would harm a lot of people, but I think the public would support you.
I don't think it's about that. I think our message is clear, and we have public approval. We don't want to start upsetting people. I think it's not going to achieve anything if we start upsetting people. You know, we're not France. We don't do that sort of thing in this country. You know, we're polite when we protest. We do everything right, by the book, with the police on our side, and that's how I believe it should continue.
All right, good man. James McGregor, thank you for your company this evening. That was Farmer James McGregor. All right, good stuff. Coming up, all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages with my panel. Some big stories on the front that you won't want to miss. And we're off to the races. Cheltenham Festival kicked off today. I'll be joined by the Grand National trainer, former jockey, Brendan Powell, whose son, Brendan Powell Jr. Actually, no, Brendan won the National himself, 1988, I think it was, on Rhyme and Reason. He's ready to have a chat with us next. Find out who his money is on for tomorrow. Don't go anywhere.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Storm Yana brings heavy rain and also risk of thunderstorms to western and central parts of the Mediterranean, but further east it's mostly settled. Outbreaks of rain just starting to clip into parts of Tenerife, also southern parts of Portugal and Spain, but the bulk of the heaviest rain across central parts of the Mediterranean, where we're still seeing a risk of thunderstorms as we head through into Wednesday. Largely settled across Greece though, and remaining settled for the rest of the week, and this is where we'll see the best of the temperatures, but elsewhere still a risk of showers and temperatures in the mid-teens.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Jason, actually, who worked for William and Kate, came out, and he worked for them between 2015 and 2021, I think. He came out and actually said, no, these allegations are there, and the Duchess of Sussex has always denied any allegations of bullying.
Yeah.
But these were accusations that were levelled at her when she was over here at Buckingham Palace, and also, interestingly, we have seen last year in particular allegations of her bullying TV production staff in America. So now these are allegations. Meghan obviously denies everything, but it does make you wonder there's no smoke without fire to have those allegations. Certainly bullying young junior members of staff, reducing people to tears. in the UK and in America, you do have to wonder whether this is lots of people who have access to grind or whether it's actually true.
You and I would have been brought up in similar working environments, and I look and I think I wouldn't even go here with Don Neeson, because what we were used to, and I'm not saying subjected to, because everybody got it. There were loud voices, there was threatening behaviour. I had telephones thrown at me, cups thrown at me. I had a typewriter thrown at my feet, an Adler typewriter. And that was, what's wrong with this script? I don't know.
What was this, telly bosses?
Yeah.
Most of the bosses I worked for were basically psychopaths.
Yeah. Well, look,
it made them more driven.
I don't feel wounded or harmed by it, but what I do realise is that you could never replicate, you could never in any way say to anyone, what the heck are you doing? Because you're aggressive to it. Although I don't see it as aggressive, but just you need to point out to people where they're doing things wrong. So I don't know how, in this day and age, you actually get people back on the right track or not.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, and now it's time to go to the races, because one of the biggest events in the horse jump racing calendar started today, fondly known as the greatest show on turf. It is, of course, the Cheltenham Festival. Brits in Benidorm, though, over in Spain, they've been ready since 9:30 this morning. Looks a bit chilly there, doesn't it? They need a few more Guinnesses to warm them up. Anyway, I'm joined now by Grand National winning jockey Brendan Powell. Brendan, good evening. Thank you for your company. Interesting first day at the Cheltenham Festival. Of course, it runs from Tuesday to Friday, finishing with the Gold Cup. Bookies seem to have won this one against the punters today. What's happened?
It is. It's been an up and down day, hasn't it? Started off with Willie Mullins winning the first with the odds-on shot, which was very impressive, and then the main race of the day, the Champion Hurdle. Everybody wanted to see Constitution Hill win, and he fell at the top of the hill, and then State Man looked like he was going to win and fell at the last. So left it to the filly who won the Mayor's Hurdle last year, and she won easily.
I think it was Golden Acre at 25-1, and in third place, Brendan, was I call it one of my mum's bets. She won't bet on any favourites or any jollies. She just finds the biggest price horse available and puts a couple of quid each way. But Winter Fog finished third, 150-1. Not bad if you had a couple of pounds on that one.
Yeah, but I'm afraid there was only a few runners in it, so she didn't get anything for each way in the first two.
Oh, there was less than 6 runners.
Exactly.
OK, interesting. So, Brendan, for people who don't know about racing, there will be some viewers now watching this thinking, well, I don't really care about this. What does the Cheltenham Festival mean to Britain? It's, of course, it's the Irish against the Brits, isn't it, in essence?
It is. I suppose it's a bit like sort of Wimbledon to tennis players, the FA Cup final to footballers, the World Cup to footballers, and and to us, it's the pinnacle of our season. That, and then followed by Aintree in 3 weeks' time. And these horses have been prepared all season to get here. And some of them get there, some don't. But it's what we all want to win it.
I guess most people, if they're not invested in racing or don't really pay much attention to it, they think, well, rightly so, that the Grand National is kind of the pinnacle of jump racing in this country. You, of course, won the National. Was it in? I said it was 88. Is that right?
Yeah, it was indeed.
So it's the Gold Cup this Friday at the Cheltenham Festival. I remember back in the day, it was a few years ago, Many Clouds won the Cheltenham Festival. He won the Gold Cup. One of my favourite horses, actually. I'll admit now I cried when he died. But he went on to try and win... he won the National first and then went on to try and win the Gold Cup. Is there any prospect of a repeat from any of the runners this year in the Gold Cup and the National?
I can't see it, because this year, for some reason, there's usually 3.5 or 4 weeks between these meetings, but this year it's actually less than 3 weeks. So most of these horses won't get to Aintree. Maybe the ones over hurdles that will, but not the national type horses.
OK, Brendan. And finally, your boy, Brendan Powell Jr., he's a three-time festival winner. Is he racing this week?
He is. He had 2 rides today and they were both second. So they both ran well in the handicaps. I think there was sort of 22 or 3 runners in each, and they've run well. But he's got a good ride on JPO, one in the Grand Annual tomorrow. He's got a big chance.
Is that your tip?
I'll make that my tip tomorrow. Good each chance.
All right, Brendan Powell, thank you for your company. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks, Ben. Take care.
Yeah, it's one of the... I love horse racing. I think it's one of our great British institutions. I know you get the Animal Rights Brigade every year, especially at the National. You'll see it next month. They'll come out in full force. But little do they know that thoroughbreds, at least, are some of the most looked after and privileged animals on the planet. Let's go through the first of tomorrow's newspapers. They have just dropped. The Metro covers the Bushey murders. They'll roll out the red carpet in hell for you, Kyle Clifford. Those were the words of John Hunt, who is the BBC Radio 5 Live horse racing commentator. As I said at the top of the show, he was meant to be at Cheltenham today in his element, calling on the races. Instead, he was in Cambridge Crown Court listening to the sentencing of that monster on the front page of the Metro. The Guardian. The United States says the ball is in Russia's court as Ukraine agrees a 30-day ceasefire. And also the picture there of Manchester United's new stadium down the bottom. I think it's a £2 billion stadium, or is it more than that, as far as I remember? 100,000 seater. They will say goodbye to Old Trafford. Some, though, let me know what you think about this. Some people suggesting it looks a bit like the Butlins or circus top. So,
I mean, it looks like something that's coming from, like, a UFO.
Or from space, yeah. Exactly. The Daily Telegraph. Putin told to agree Ukraine ceasefire. Pressure now is on the Kremlin and Moscow to come to the table and agree that 30-day ceasefire.
Has there ever been pressure on the Kremlin? What happens if they don't agree?
An interesting one here. Farm subsidies, still on the Telegraph. Again, this is a hat-trick on government attacks on farmers. We just heard about the compulsory purchase land grab. Now, though, according to the Telegraph, farming subsidies have been halted by the government in a fresh blow to rural communities. So what on earth is the agenda of this government? We'll talk about that in just a second. The Daily Mail, again, they lead with Ukraine. They agree a ceasefire deal. Pictures of John Hunt and his daughters there, Hannah and Louise, who were murdered by that pathetic excuse of a man in Bushey. The devastating last words of BBC commentator in court. And The Sun. Very interesting story here from The Sun. We can't talk about it because it's an active legal case, but exclusive. Health Secretary's horror. Wes Aid flashed girl 13. A senior assistant to Wes Streeting exposed himself to a 13-year-old girl, then followed her. The terrified teen banged on doors for help as Labour councillor and ex-parliamentary candidate Sam Gould, who's 33, pursued her. Interesting. Right, let's talk about this Daily Telegraph story. A hat-trick, Esther, of attacks now on farmers. They are halting subsidies in what's been called a new betrayal on our hard-working British farmers.
Yeah, without notice until a June spending review can be conducted. I mean, they're not exact. I don't know if the idea is that farmers are getting rich off of government subsidies, but this was supposed to replace the EU subsidies that they lost post-Brexit, and it just amounts to about £3,000 a year. So it's not exactly making them rich. But I just get the sense that the government is really kind of overstepping with how far they can get. They think they can get away with things when it comes to the farmers. And I'm not really sure that their plans are going to go down as well, but especially with newer MPs that really are in these constituencies that are going to hear a lot of angry farmers saying...
really good point.
This is a big problem. I mean, you're just starting your career in politics. This could end it if you don't do something about this and put some pressure on the government to actually listen a lot more to the farmers, especially with sort of these forced land grabs that we're hearing, which I hope doesn't materialise in the way that it's going around.
Yeah, I just think it's bonkers. It's a really good point, actually. Maybe if it's not going to be the farmers protesting in London every weekend with their tractors and honking horns, maybe it will be Labour MPs, Alex, who eventually say, come on, Mr. Prime Minister.
A lot of them are new. A lot of Labour backbenchers are sort of new, young, basically hand-picked by Keir Starmer MPs.
In rural areas?
Yeah, well, yeah, that are just getting started in politics. They're not like sort of cabinet ministers like Yvette Cooper that have been in politics for almost 3 decades, and they have to remember that.
Alex, does the government have an agenda when it comes to farmers?
Quite clearly, they seem to be punishing them month after month. It's a massive betrayal because those Labour MPs who are now MPs, are candidates at the time, stood up with Keir Starmer in multiple rural communities. Keir Starmer told all of those voters, I will not betray you. I will not betray farmers. And what has he done? Betrayal after betrayal. And rather than cutting, let's say, I don't know, the billions spent on people illegally breaking into our country, we are punishing the people that produce our food supply. This is a national security crisis. If the war does escalate, and let's say Putin doesn't agree to the Ukraine ceasefire, and this does escalate, we have 60% of our food supply is here in the UK. The rest of it we have to import. So we're really putting at risk the people who actually put food on our plates. It's scary.
Same question to you, Jonathan. Does the government have an agenda when it comes to farmers?
No, I'm sure it doesn't have an agenda when it comes to farmers particularly. The government clearly is being buffeted by global headwinds and sees the need to cut spending. And so there'll have to be very, very difficult decisions made about where it's going to cut spending. Now, I have always advocated against austerity. And, there are numerous ways the government can raise money by taxing the rich, by sort of being a bit sort of more relaxed about its borrowing rules. But the government's ruled those things out. Therefore, it might have to sort of make some savings on money.
What makes you think any of this is about money? Because they're making, with the inheritance tax raid, I think, is it £500 million to the Treasury? Enough to fund the NHS for one day. So clearly...
That's assuming people pay it and don't put all the assets into
the inheritance...
We're not idiots. So
the inheritance tax, there's a perfectly legitimate argument to be made that the inheritance tax issue is being done to close a tax loophole that some people were exploiting by buying up land that they weren't planning to use for farming, so they could pass it on to their descendants free of inheritance tax. So
the political fallout. Surely.
I actually don't think that this is the massively unpopular policy that watching GB News would have you believe. I think that the winter fuel payments cut was much worse. Well, I'm sure farmers aren't going to like it. Absolutely.
They're not all GB News viewers down in
I also think there's a reality that the government realised that its economic agenda is not growing Britain. This whole country can avoid having to have austerity if it's able to grow. And the reality is 8 months on or so, and Rachel Reeves's socialist budget has destroyed the economy. It's sent markets plunging. Inflation's been stagnating and heading up and down constantly because, again, the markets don't know what she's doing. And therefore, we're now in a position where the markets can't grow. Therefore, we're having to make cuts to our public sector.
Well, I mean, I think the thing is, assuming that this is not a high priority for people, they won't be as upset as the winter fuel payments. You have a week where they can't get their usual groceries from the supermarket and they will change their mind quickly. Food security, even though we don't talk about it regularly, is a massive issue.
Yeah.
That's not something that should be underestimated in a world where things are a lot more unstable and a lot more unpredictable. That's just reality.
OK, thanks, panel. Coming up, more of tomorrow's pages, plus the latest shocking attempt to erase women. And you won't believe what that entails. I'll bring you that next. Oh, and there's still time to get tickets for Friday night's Patrick Christys Tonight show, this week hosted by Bev Turner. And she's got something very special planned.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christys Tonight show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays, I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christys Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, very good evening to you. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Now, it is going to be a bit of a chilly night ahead, and with that then, there's the risk of some frost, even some icy patches, as there will be quite a few showers around. A lot of the showers in association with a cold front that's making its way southward, so we will see some showery pulses across parts of Northern Ireland through the end of the day, and also feeding into parts of perhaps the Midlands, but also across Wales. Quite a few showery outbreaks here, some sleet or snow over some higher ground possible. Also plenty of showers piling in across eastern parts of Scotland, northeast England, and again some sleet or snow likely here. Temperatures are going to drop, and where we get clear skies dipping to around, if not a bit below freezing. So so there could be a bit of frost around first thing tomorrow morning, also some icy stretches, so do take care on the roads. Otherwise, as we go through the morning, in the west of Scotland, it's looking largely dry, quite bright as well. Further east, more showers to come and a bit of a breeze as well, adding to the chilly feel to things. Mostly dry across Northern Ireland, but also across northern England. In the east, it's looking pretty showery. Across the Midlands and much of Wales, a largely bright, fine start to the day, but in the far south of England, it is going to be cloudier and there will be some showery outbreaks, all in association with that front that pushed through overnight. Through the day, I am expecting more showers tomorrow than we saw through today, and with that then there's a greater chance of some heavy ones, even a few rumbles of thunder perhaps, and some more sleet and snow. Over modest higher ground we could see a bit settling to lower levels. A few flurries are possible. Temperatures are going to be lower than today, and that makes it feel pretty chilly, especially when you factor in that wind. As we go through Thursday then, more showers across eastern parts. Further west, a greater chance of staying dry because there is high pressure to the west of us, but that high pressure is going to take quite a while to push its way in. So Friday is still going to be showery for many, but eventually we see something a little bit drier, more settled in time for the weekend, when we should have some sunshine around.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo. More newspaper front pages have dropped. Let's have a look at the Daily Express. Really moving front page. I am so proud of all my girls. BBC racing commentator John Hunt pays tribute to his wife and 2 daughters and says the screams of hell await cowardly killer Kyle Clifford after his sentencing today. The Times, Kyiv open to ceasefire as Trump restarts aid. They're also restarting their intelligence sharing with Ukraine. Let's hope now Moscow, Putin come to the table. And there's Zara Tindall at Cheltenham Festival today. Right, very, very funny story that tickled me today. Harry Potter fans, do you remember Ron Weasley's girlfriend in The Half-Blood Prince? Well, Jessie Cave, the actress who plays the character, has announced a new venture in which she'll be casting some spells.
I'm starting an OnlyFans.
Yeah. Right.
Hair stuff.
Yeah.
So stuff like this.
Right.
Just going like that. That's the kind of thing.
You'd like it, as in, like, in a sexual way?
Well, it's like it is a fetish.
Yeah.
I think. I hope. Slutty Mormon.
Any feet or bums and anything like that?
No.
The mother of 4 has joined the adult platform to, quote, get out of debt and to prove to those in the past that she's not so sweet and to put some time into something she's never invested before, self-love. Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. Esther, Alex, Jonathan. What's your price? I mean, look, I will say, lots of people are now turning to OnlyFans to supplement their income.
Lily Allen does feet pics.
This camera keeps panning to this panel every single time we talk about
Go on, Alex. What's your price for OnlyFans? Ditch GBNews, forget the political commentary, and get your kids off.
I haven't thought about it that deeply, if I'm being honest, Ben. Actually, let me base it off of what. Wait, actually, let me base it off of what Jonathan's is. What's your price, Jonathan?
Don't you dare pass it on to me. Whatever your price is, I'll just raise it.
I was going to say, yeah.
He'll do it for free anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Esther, what do you make of this? Is it empowering women? Is it a sign of self-love, as this young lady is talking about?
Well, it's definitely not empowering women, because most women don't make any money on it because their marketing skills are off.
Oh, they make an absolute
You see,
fortune.
she's trying to place a certain fetish, but you see, the slutty Mormon, as she calls, is a very niche and it's very small. The market is not very big. You have to have a good marketing department.
I like that Esther's really thought about this.
Yeah, because what's your price? Well, what do you got? How much you willing?
You're asking me.
Look, there are lots.
Generally.
I feel like this conversation is getting far too serious.
Look, there are. Look,
Ben's contemplating.
Ben was just telling us about his massive gay following.
Oh, right.
Go on then. Go on then, Ben.
Yeah, I've got some fans. Let's move on. The charity St John's Ambulance has sparked outrage after referring to women as people with breasts.
They're not wrong.
In official CPI guidance on its website, the charity says it aims to address the fact that people with breasts are statistically less likely to receive bystander CPR than men. Really? Gender-critical campaigners have accused the charity of misogyny. Esther, are they trying to erase people with breasts? Sorry, I mean women.
Well, technically, the last time I checked, and I looked down to check, women are people with breasts. Now, I don't know what other people they think have breasts.
Well, like moobs. What about people with moobs?
Man boobs.
Yeah. And a lot of women, and some women don't have. Some women have had mastectomies.
They're not women. They just need a good personal trainer. I can recommend a few, and they need to get a Pure Gym membership. That's all.
You know, it's just...
You just have to laugh, because if you don't laugh, you'll cry.
No, but it's so ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, just like... It's like when the NHS said... there was the story the other day where someone couldn't give blood because they were asking whether they were pregnant. And the man went... They literally asked the man in the blood donation, are you pregnant? He went, yes. He's like, this is just... It's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, it's so nonsense.
I just think there are so many things we can get angry and upset about.
I know, but there's
but
it's also so many things not to be distracted with this kind of rubbish, isn't it? You just...
Also, I think
it's a little bit funny, because like...
It's drawing attention to the breast issue, because some women don't have breasts, and presumably that won't be an issue for them.
And also...
that's the thing, how big are the breasts? Is it A, is it B?
Well, some women have had mastectomies.
And some men have breasts.
That's exactly what I just said. That's exactly, I just made that point, Ben.
Sorry, I wasn't listening to you.
What else is news?
I tend to zone out when you talk.
So, oh my God, that is so Ofcom.
No, joking. Sorry, no, I had people talk in my ear. Yeah, interesting. It's there is an erasure of women, but I think I always say I'm like a broken record. I think we're 2, 3, 4 years behind the United States, and they, of course, have taken a flamethrower to all this woke nonsense. So, I agree. St John's Ambulance said, or St John Ambulance, in a statement, according to research, women are less likely than men to receive life-saving CPR in public because people are afraid to touch breasts. For International Women's Day this week, we revisited our CPR bra campaign that focused on saving more women's lives to remind people of the first aid steps to improve the women's chances of survival. This reluctance to give CPR affects everybody, with breasts and the CPR guidance on our web pages seeks to convey this important message. We've reviewed the title of the CPR guidance on our website and are improving the wording to ensure it reflects everybody St John seeks to help. Interesting. Right, Josh Howie. We go to a man with breasts. Josh Howie's on standby. What's in store with headliners tonight, Josh?
Well, I was watching your show. I was inspired by your Harry Potter start, actually, because I've got a huge gay fan base, and I was thinking about doing some sort of hair combing thing to make a lot of money on OnlyFans. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, we obviously have ceasefire in Ukraine. That's the big story. But we've also got the end of Quangos. We'll see. Sacked for posting very negatively about Islam. We're going to debate that one. And we have Magic Mike posters being defaced. And it definitely wasn't me who did that. I just want to point that out. We also have Kerry Marks and Steve and Alan. It's going to be a really, really great show.
Lovely. Look forward to it. Thank you, Josh. Lady of the House on Your Say has said Ben would make a bob or two on OnlyFans with those come-to-bed eyes. I think the only eyes I get are please make the bed from my wife. There was a word said earlier in reference to this OnlyFans story, which began with S, about Mormons. We apologise for that if any offence was taken. I'm sure there wasn't. That's the cracky one. It's offensive. Thank you.
That's what she said in the video.
I know.
OK, that was her inspo.
I know. No, don't worry about it. Esther, thank you very much. Alex, thank you for your company tonight. Jonathan as well. Thank you at home for your company. I'm back for one more day covering Patrick tomorrow from 9 p.m. Then it's Bev Thursday and Friday. And if you want to see Bev live on Friday night with a TV audience, go to the website and scan the QR code. Next up, it's Headliners. That's after your weather. Very good night to you.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good evening to you. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Now, it is going to be a bit of a chilly night ahead, and with that then, there's the risk of some frost, even some icy patches, as there will be quite a few showers around. A lot of the showers in association with a cold front that's making its way southward, so we will see some showery pulses across parts of Northern Ireland through the end of the day, and also feeding into parts of perhaps the Midlands, but also across Wales. Quite a few showery outbreaks here, some sleet or snow over some higher ground possible. Also plenty of showers piling in across eastern parts of Scotland, northeast England, and again some sleet or snow likely here. Temperatures are going to drop, and where we get clear skies, dipping to around, if not a bit below freezing. So there could be a bit of frost around first thing tomorrow morning, also some icy stretches, so do take care on the roads. Otherwise, as we go through the morning, in the west of Scotland, it's looking largely dry, quite bright as well. Further east, more showers to come and a bit of a breeze as well, adding to the chilly feel to things. Mostly dry across Northern Ireland, but also across northern England in the east, it's looking pretty showery. Across the Midlands and much of Wales, a largely bright, fine start to the day, but in the far south of England, it is going to be cloudier and there will be some showery outbreaks, all in association with that front that pushed through overnight. Through the day, I am expecting more showers tomorrow than we saw through today, and with that then there's a greater chance of some heavy ones, even a few rumbles of thunder perhaps, and some more sleet and snow. Over modest higher ground we could see a bit settling to lower levels. A few flurries are possible. Temperatures are going to be lower than today, and that makes it feel pretty chilly, especially when you factor in that wind. As we go through Thursday then, more showers across eastern parts. Further west, a greater chance of staying dry because there is high pressure to the west of us, but that high pressure is going to take quite a while to push its way in. So Friday is still going to be showery for many, but eventually we see something a little bit drier, more settled in time for the weekend when we should have some sunshine around.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We want to spruce up your spring with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash that you can spend however you like. But that's not all, as you'll also receive not one, but 2 brand new designer watches and a fabulous Mulberry handbag. For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Corton Beach is not a naturist beach. Lewd behaviour will not be tolerated and may be recorded by CCTV and reported to the police.
It says causing an offence to others is a criminal. Causing offence to others is a criminal offence, and all cases will be reported for prosecution. And a spokesman then says we're not targeting or trying to outlaw the naturists. The parish council recognises that naturism in the UK is legal.
So what are they doing then?
Well, let's talk to the organiser to find out. The British Naturism Eastern Regional, Nigel Newman. Shows us now. Morning, Nigel. Sorry, I think it's the first time I've interviewed somebody without their top on. But, you know, right, Nigel, what's going on down there? Because I think we pretty much support your right to be able to, you know, swing free on a nice warm day.
Well, the thing is, Corton Beach in Suffolk is very, very popular and has been since the 1970s for naturists. And one of the reasons for that is right next to a car park with a cafe with toilets, and there's, and this is a bit important, there's a ramp that goes right down to the top of the beach, which is ideal for disabled naturists. And that's one of the reasons that it's so well attended over the years. And what's happened is, back in December, this sign appeared, great big yellow sign with black writing saying, warning, as you read out, Corton Beach is not a naturist beach. Well, that's not accurate, because every beach is a naturist beach. Naturism is not unlawful. And the sign then goes on to suggest, because it's in the very next sentence, that lewd behaviour will not be tolerated. Well, British Naturism totally agree with that statement. Lewd behaviour should not be tolerated. But lewd behaviour and naturism are 2 completely different things.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi all, it's 11 o'clock, which means it's time for tomorrow's newspapers tonight. Join us over the next hour to find out, is it the beginning of peace in Ukraine? what would you not smuggle on holiday, back from holiday, and why Magic Mike has people hot and bothered. I'm Josh Howie. Tonight, I'm joined by funny people Steve N. Allen and Kerry Marks to take you through Wednesday's top stories. This is Headliners. But before a whole bunch of tomorrow's news, let's go to tonight's headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Josh, thank you. Your headlines at 11 o'clock. Ukraine has agreed to accept a US proposal for a 30-day ceasefire with Russia after talks concluded today in Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, the US says it will immediately restore intelligence sharing and security assistance to Ukraine, according to a joint statement. Speaking in the last few hours, US President Donald Trump addressed the ceasefire deal.
Get the Russians to agree?
I'll talk to Vladimir Putin, yeah.
When will
I
you
want to
talk
get,
to him?
look, that's the other, it takes two to tango, as they say, right? So hopefully he'll also agree, and I really think that would be 75% of the way. The rest is getting it documented and, you know, negotiating land positions, etc.
So you'll talk to him this week about the deal?
So, yeah.
So and when do you anticipate meeting him in person?
In place on the Ukrainian side, how close do you think then you are to a total ceasefire with
Well, I hope it'll be over the next few days. I'd like to see. I know we have a big meeting with Russia tomorrow, and some great conversations hopefully will ensue. The people have done a great job. Marco Rubio's been great.
Meanwhile, the White House has confirmed that the 50% tariff planned for tomorrow on some Canadian metals has been cancelled. Instead, a previously planned 25% tariff will still be enacted. Donald Trump had told reporters outside the White House this afternoon that he was rethinking his decision to double tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium after Ontario cancelled a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to 3 US states. Meanwhile, back in the UK, a 13-year-old girl has been charged with the murder over the death of a mother of 3 following a fire at a home in Wellingborough. That's according to Northamptonshire Police. The force said the girl, who cannot be named for legal reasons, has also been charged with arson and with the attempt to endanger life. Formal identification has yet to be confirmed, but the woman is believed to be 43-year-old Marta Bednarkits, who was found dead at the scene. And suspected Channel migrant Abu Wadi has pleaded not guilty to entering the UK illegally. 33-year-old Wadi, who allegedly arrived on a migrant boat